This is Boxing with Mannix and Mora. I'm Chris Mannix. He is the former junior middleweight champion, Sergio Mora. On this episode, we are going to get into Ryan Garcia's return to Eddie Reynoso, Derek Chisora's return to the ring, and we'll look ahead to the heavyweight showdown between Danny Dubois and Joseph Parker. But first, Sergio, this is now, by my count, at least the third time that we have attempted to record the open of this show. Because in my 20 years covering boxing, I cannot recall a wilder two-day stretch. So to recap, on Wednesday, Ring Magazine, which is owned by Turki Al-Sheikh, reported that a planned fight between Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford was kaput. Not happening. About 24 hours later, on Thursday afternoon, ESPN reported that Canelo and Jake Paul were finalizing a deal for Paul and Canelo to meet in a cruiserweight fight. By the early evening on Thursday, that was where we were. And we sat down, we started to record. This was the landscape early evening on Thursday. Turki Al-Sheikh was, pissed off about, Canelo fighting Jake Paul. Now Canelo Crawford was off. And the planned 3-fight deal that Canelo had agreed to with Turki was gone. About an hour later, after that ESPN report came out, Turki pops up on social media, and he announces that Canelo has agreed to a 4-fight deal. Canelo will now fight in Riyadh in May, not against Jake Paul, which will be followed by the showdown against Terence Crawford in the U.S. in September, which will be followed by 2 more fights over in Riyadh in 2026, one in February and one in October, which are the key months for Riyadh season. To top it all off, on Friday, just before we started recording the final version, I hope, of this week's pod, Jake Paul lashed out. He called Canelo a duck. He said he was an owned slave with no regard for the pride of the Mexican people, and Jake declared himself to be the new face of boxing. So, Sergio, your early thoughts, first thoughts on what we've seen happen over the last couple of days.
Well, considering I'm one of those Mexican people, I applaud, and I am so happy that Canelo decided to, duck, quote unquote, duck Jake Paul, because Jake Paul's not a real fighter, and you know my story behind there. So I'm glad the boxing's biggest star, Saul Alvarez, decided to not face this influencer, not face this social media troll, and go back to what he does best, and that's fight champions on the championship level with everyone watching on a pay-per-view scale with big money, prize fighting money, and the whole world watching him. That's where Canelo belongs. Whether it's with a champion or someone that a stay busy fight, I'm all right with that, as long as it's a boxer, as long as someone that deserves that slot, that special slot. And by slot, I mean those 2 special dates that a lot of Mexicans, and thanks to Floyd Mayweather, considered, special, and that's Cinco de Mayo weekend, and that's September 16th. Those are Mexican and Mexican American holidays that were special in boxing and continue to be special. I hate it for this guy, Jake Paul, to weasel his way in. So I'm happy that Canelo, El Jefe de Jefes, and His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh decided to, block this on the 11th hour. And it took money, man. It took money. One thing I know about powerful people, man, is I got to know a lot of powerful people in the television business. They hate being told no, man. And money solves everything. So when we heard no, and we heard, plan B and C, and everyone's scrambling, money and power took over, man. Money and power took over. And the lion, as Turki Al-Sheikh said he was, or whether he's referring to Canelo, 2 lions met, they agreed. Now it's time to eat, man. I love it. Boxing's better for it.
Well, it definitely took money, because the Canelo-Jake Paul negotiations were not a bluff. I don't know how close they were to actually finalizing this deal, but from what I was told over the last few days, they were inching closer and closer to a deal. It was really coming down to some minor financial a minor financial gap for both these guys, but they were on the same page for Canelo to fight Jake Paul in May. It was going to be a cruiserweight. I think PBC was going to be involved in the fight as well. Netflix was on board to stream it. I mean, they were definitely in to do Canelo against Jake Paul. So this was happening. And then, to your point, Turkey Al-Sheikh does not like to lose. And he doesn't like to see the best laid plans kind of go away. And for right now, he doesn't want anything to do with Jake Paul and kind of the Jake Paul fights that are happening, over the last couple of years. So I would love to kind of figure out in the days and weeks ahead exactly what happened, specifically over these last 12 hours. What phone calls were made, what offers were made. Obviously, the money went up, right? Because Canelo was originally getting what I was told was a 3-fight, $200 million deal. He was getting a big deal from Turkey Al-Sheikh to fight first Crawford and then 2 subsequent fights in 2026. Adding the 4th fight onto this, I don't know how much money that's going to mean. Does it mean $50 million more, $60 million, $70 million? I have no idea how much more money that means for Canelo Alvarez. But you better believe it was a boatload of money because Canelo was in line to make a pile of cash to fight Jake Paul. I had people telling me that Canelo could have earned upwards of $100 million to fight Jake Paul. Netflix, like I said, was all in with their cash. So walking away from Jake Paul means walking away from a lot of money. So Canelo, I firmly believe, had to have been getting most of that back in return for taking this deal from Turkey. The other big winner in all this, Sergio, is Terence Crawford. You and I talked about this in one of the many times we tried to record this, but Terence Crawford, if this fight fell through, I don't know where Terence Crawford would have gone. He's what, 30, maybe 37 years old, I think, this summer before a Canelo fight. Where does he go for a big fight? I mean, if Virgil Ortiz beats Madrimov, is Virgil Ortiz a big fight? We saw some people out there talking about Boots Ennis against Crawford. Yeah, that's a big fight, but it's bigger to the boxing hardcore audience than it is to the mainstream audience. Does Sebastian Fundora move the needle for Terence Crawford? Getting one step closer to being undisputed at 54. I don't know. Crawford is a big winner. The 2 big winners in all this are Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford. Don't you think?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And integrity matters. I know in boxing it could be a shady business, but when it comes to the champions that are, at the top, Canelo being one of them, integrity matters, pride matters, what your fans think of you matters, because you fight for the people, you fight with the country on your shoulders. And I love the fact that Canelo, decided not to join the circus. Yes, money matters, but for Canelo, he's already made a lot of money. He's made a lot of money, and he's a future Hall of Famer, and he has that orgullo, man, that pride that he's not gonna fall in line with whoever is throwing money at him, whether it's the social media route or whether it's this Riyadh season or wherever it's PBC or Matchroom. It's whatever he wants to do. He's the boss, man. And that's why you got to respect Saul Alvarez, because he went from network to network, from promoter to promoter, going wherever he can get the biggest possible fights. And if they weren't the biggest and most popular, they were the ones that were more important to him, the ones that he wanted to take care of. That's what we want every fighter to do. We want every fighter to take the bull by the horns and control their own career, not to have a mouthpiece, talking for them, not to have lawyers and promoters and managers doing the talking for them. So Canelo Alvarez handles his own business. He goes where he wants to go. And you gotta respect that, man. You have to respect that. I don't care on what side of the street you're on. We're getting the best fighter, one of the best fighters in the world, one of the most popular fighters in the world, doing what he wants to do. And now it's time for him to go to Saudi and join Riyadh season and do what he has to do.
Well, even though the Canelo-Jake Paul fight is not happening right now, I wouldn't rule it out in the future. Obviously, it's in Canelo's mind to do this fight. He has said he wants to fight several more years. Jake Paul is only 28 years old. If Jake Paul is still in boxing in 2 years, they're going to fight. If Canelo is still a top level guy, which at least in terms of marketability, I believe he is, I think it's inevitable, Sergio, that we get Canelo against Jake Paul, whether you like it or not. It's
No,
going to happen.
and Chris, I'm fine with that. As long as Jake Paul comes back and beats a real boxer, a former champion, an older former champion, someone competent. If he comes back to face like a Jaime Munguia, Big time. Yeah, you deserve that. Go ahead. Someone on that level, if you can actually do that and not beat a senior citizen and Mike Tyson, then I'm fine with Jake Paul doing that. That's when he's actually good for the sport, when he's actually being competitive on somewhat of an even scale. But when you're fighting, Mike Tyson just for his name and his legacy and embarrassing him like that in front of, hundreds of millions of viewers, that leaves a sour taste in real boxing fans' mouths, including myself. So
Yeah, but you could hold on, sir. You couldn't if you were offered to fight Mike Tyson, you would have taken it too. Like, don't tell me you wouldn't have. You would have fought Mike Tyson. If they offered you a boatload of money to fight Mike Tyson, you would have done it. Name me one boxer out there that wouldn't have taken that fight against Mike Tyson because they were afraid of hurting the legacy of Mike Tyson. Not a single fighter in the world would have passed
yeah,
on that
yeah,
opportunity.
but you're talking, going mano a mano with another boxer, someone that's dedicated their lives to this sport and career, that bled the same blood as you, that's done the exact same things, gone through the same struggles. You're telling me this social media influencer from Ohio, has the same background as a guy that shed blood in the ring and dedicated their lives to boxing to get these opportunities, these big stages, to get these big paydays. He took a shortcut, man. He took a shortcut, and we all know why. But he took a shortcut to the top. All right, so we don't want that. We don't want that. We want, boxers to pick up themselves by the bootstraps. You got to bleed like we bled, fight the guys that we fought, and we got to take the same route, that Marvin Hagler route. You don't take the social media route just because you got followers. Good for you for doing that. You're a hustler, but guys like me can never respect that.
Okay, hold on. Just for the record, the Marvin Hagler route that you're referring to, Hagler came up the ranks in the late 70s, 1980s, fighting guys nobody ever heard of. He had to
Blue collar route, man.
blue
That's what
collar.
I mean.
No,
Just a blue
I know
collar.
what I'm trying to explain just to the audience what you're talking about. The Marvin Hagler had to earn everything that he got. He couldn't get that fight with Ray Leonard for a long time. He wasn't fighting the big mega fights during his reign as middleweight champion. But Sergio, everybody cuts corners to some level. Edgar Berlanga just cut corners. Edgar Berlanga fought nobody. His best win was against a guy named Patrick McGrory, and he wound up with a Canelo Alvarez fight. It's just there are just degrees to it. Yeah, Jake Paul has cut a massive corner. He cut the line in a big, big way. But fighters cut the line all the time. Most fighters aren't Marvin Hagler. Most fighters don't come up having to fight tough fights until they get to 25 or 30-0 before they get in championship contention. All fighters try to gain the kind of popularity that Jake Paul has. I don't want to get into this debate with you about Jake Paul of this one. I do think I will try to make the argument though, Sergio, that Turki Al-Sheikh should have embraced this Jake Paul fight because first of all, there was no chance that Canelo could lose. Canelo beats Jake Paul every day of the week and twice on Sunday. It's a fact. Even if the fight is at cruiserweight, he still beats him. That's a fight that would be watched by a lot of people. On Netflix, probably get 40, 50 million eyeballs watching that fight. That grows the Canelo brand. One way or the other, it grows the Canelo brand. It increases the visibility. And by extension, if Canelo's fighting Jake Paul in front of a lot of eyeballs, some of those eyeballs, Sergio, might want to see Canelo fight Terence Crawford in September. Might want to see Canelo fight in Riyadh in February and October. Look, we're not talking about opponents that are going to move the needle in May. Some of the names that have been tossed out there, I've seen your pal Bruno Surratt, the French baguette over there, just making things happen over in France. He is apparently in the mix for this fight. Jermall Charlo's name is resurfacing once again. I would expect them to come back and see what's going on with William Skull. Like these,
Hey, whoa,
these.
whoa, 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 you forgot one more. You forgot one more. You
Who
didn't
you?
talk about Bruno.
That's what I
No,
just said. I just
no.
said Bruno Surratt.
Oh, did you? That was your first one?
That was the first one. And
That's my
I made the
favorite one,
French
man.
baguette joke. Come on.
Oh, I thought you were talking about a Frenchman and Billy. My bad. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. Bruno, yes. Bruno could be on that list. And by the way, if I'm Bruno Surratt, I take that fight all day long.
Absolutely.
'Cause then you can get a payday against Munguia down the line. Doesn't really matter. The point is, none of these guys move the needle. None of these guys have fan bases of their own. And every one of them gets beat bad by Canelo. I'm not going to sit here and say that Jake Paul would be a tougher fight for Canelo than a Surratt, a Charlo, or a Skull. But he's not that much easier either. Like at 200
Yes, he is.
pounds, I'm just saying it's not like he's passing on, or it's not like he's embracing a huge fight against Diego Pacheco in May instead of the Jake Paul fight. He's passing on Jake Paul to fight somebody that he's probably going to walk right over.
You're just saying, and what you're just saying is wrong. It doesn't matter if it's 200 pounds or 220 pounds. Body shot's going to feel the same pain. Canelo's going to be able to break down a guy that doesn't know how to take pain, doesn't know how to hide when he's hurt, doesn't know how to, fight when he's off balance, doesn't know how to. So many things. I don't want to get into it. Jake Paul doesn't know how to
Hold on.
box.
The point is, look, I don't disagree with that assessment. I think Canelo batters Jake Paul to the body. I think it's be careful what you wish for, Jake, because that's a tough fight for you. At the same time, like Bruno Saras landed one great punch against Jaime Munguia. Against Canelo, he's lunch meat. Jamal Charlo has fought like one time in the last 5 years. Like the last time we saw a Charlo in with Canelo, he moved around the ring for 12 rounds and didn't put up any kind of resistance. I mean, William Skull, I'm a Skullhead, man. I am Team Skull. I am the captain of Team Skull, but he's not a threat to Canelo either. I'm just saying these guys aren't threats. And if your goal is to build up Canelo against Crawford to being the biggest fight it can be, wouldn't it be better for Canelo to fight Jake Paul in May instead of Bruno Saras?
No, because Bruno has a story to tell. He just knocked out a fellow Mexican in Jaime Munguia, someone that Canelo couldn't knock out. You could sell that. William Skull has a title. You could sell that. Jamal Charlo has an undefeated record, and he's already knocked out his twin brother or beat his twin brother. You could sell that. These are marketable fights. Those three fights sell themselves. Canelo
but not anywhere near as marketable as Canelo-Jake Paul. Not even on the same.
Well, look, you're talking about two different markets. You're talking about two different markets. Yes, the Jake Paul fight will be tremendously popular on that side of the fence. I don't live on that side of the fence. All right, so I don't want no part of it.
But isn't the point though? Isn't the point to expand the fence? Like, isn't that the point? Like,
we tried that.
Our little boxing neighborhood, Sergio, our little boxing neighborhood gets smaller and smaller every single year. Like, people keep moving out of the boxing neighborhood and nobody's moving back in. We need people seeing Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah, you know what that's called when people move out? For that reason, gentrification. This is boxing's version of gentrification, Chris Mannix. Look, Jake Paul is not allowed on this side of the fence because he hasn't earned his stripes. He hasn't invested in our community like we have with blood. All right. So that's the reason I don't want that guy on this side of the fence. And if you're talking about marketability, great. If Canelo wants to fight him, that's fine. I'm all for that. I just don't want to see that right now. Let Canelo be after the Crawford fight. I'm all for Jake Paul. But after he fights the best, Canelo doesn't have that many fights left, man. I mean, that's just the truth. On the peak level, we've already seen Canelo kind of, hit his peak and already be on the other side of greatness. Still greatness, still pound for pound ability, but that's what it is. Same thing with Crawford, so both of them are slowing down. We don't want to wait anymore. No more waiting, man. This is a fight that needs to happen now, this year, or maybe early next year at the absolute latest. And this is how boxing continues to survive and tread along and it continue being the greatest sport whenever it's the best fighting the best.
Do you think Edgar Berlanga earned the Canelo fight last year?
No, but here's the thing. He had 16 first-round knockouts. You know how incredibly hard that is? Mike Tyson couldn't even do that. McClellan couldn't. Gerald McClellan, the great, great puncher, couldn't do that. A lot of hard. Julian Jackson couldn't do that. George Foreman couldn't do that. Some of the biggest punchers in boxing history couldn't get 16 first-round knockouts. But who did? Edgar Berlanga. There you go. That's how you sold that fight.
Yeah, but that was years prior to the.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Did Conor McGregor earn the Floyd fight?
No, and the reason we're talking about this is because that fight made so much money, 100 million plus for Conor, and who knows, 300 million for Floyd Mayweather Jr. Once that fight succeeded on the scale that it did, that's when the levee broke, the boxing levee broke, and all the boxers and of course all the MMA fights wanted that boxing money. All right, so that's when it happened. Other than that, it used to be a sideshow, like when Muhammad Ali fought the wrestler, and when other great fighters used to have in between fights. That was just for show. There you go. It was just for show. But now it's money. Now it's networks. Now it's promoters. Now it's the big names looking at these influencers and sideshows. That's when it got carried away, man. Like, hold on. What are we here? Are we in the entertaining business only? Or are we still in the best fighting the best at the best time? And that's the sweet science. Those are two different markets, man. And I just need you need to tread lightly whenever you're trying to play with both.
Okay, but you do have to acknowledge that and I'm not trying to make Jake Paul out to be a contender. He should never be allowed to fight for a title, at least not until he's earned it. But he has fought some boxers. He had those 2 early knockouts against guys with glossy records, the kind of fighters that you have fought early in your career, others have fought early in their career. He had the 1 loss against Tommy Fury, a guy not very good, don't get me wrong, but has a lot more experience as a boxer than Jake Paul. So he started to do what you're asking him to do. Now, it would be a huge leap, and he would be jumping. I don't even know how you describe the line jump that he would be making to fight Canelo Alvarez, but it's not like he's totally inexperienced. He's not a sumo wrestler. He's not even Conor McGregor, who was in a different sport when he fought Floyd Mayweather. He's been boxing for a period of time, so I don't think it would be that grotesque. And I do think, to kind of put a button on it, I do think that a Jake Paul fight would help a Crawford fight more than Canelo going up against Bruno Serraz, Jermall Charlo, William Skull. That's kind of where I land on that
And
one.
I
Jake,
disagree.
it is interesting to, I mean, Jake clearly was rattled by all this because Jake
Yeah,
is
he was. Did you see that statement he put out? You could tell he got his feelings hurt. Oh, poor Jake Paul, the king of trolling, the king of doing what he does best, and that's being at the top. Finally, he realizes what it is to be at the bottom. And that slave comment, that wasn't cool, man. But other little things, he picked his words properly. But
he
now he
did.
knows what it's like to be on the other side of that fence and other side of that coin, and he doesn't like it.
Well,
Stay
I
there.
think there's a method to the madness on what he put out there because I think now he's going to lean pretty hard into this villain role towards Canelo. Like Canelo is ducking me. Canelo's not the face of boxing. I think you're going to see Jake get more and more antagonistic towards Canelo over these next year, 2 years, to see if that works to get him to get into the ring with him. But I don't think we'll be talking about Canelo Jake Paul for the foreseeable future.